midpoint formula is going to be our focus today. So this is 1.7, but we're breaking it into two parts. So we're just going to focus on the midpoint part of it today. We'll do the distance part of it on Thursday with you. But with midpoint formula, okay, there's two different ways that we're going to see it. We're going to see it where it's on a number line, and we're going to see it where it's in the coordinate plane. So on a number line, right, that's just a straight line, and we're going to be finding a midpoint. We're going to be finding a point in the middle of something. So basically what you're doing on a number line is you're just taking an average. How do you take an average of something? If I said you got a 82, a 94, and a 96 on 3 tests, how would you average your test score? Yeah.
Add all 3 numbers and divide by 3.
Right. Add them all up, divide by how many there are. So if I have 2 points on a number line, point A and point B, and I want to know the midpoint, I'm going to add them up and divide by 2. Okay, so that's finding the midpoint on a number line. You would just do this right here. This is, sorry, terribly blurry, but A plus B divided by 2. Okay. Now it's a little different if it's in the coordinate plane, because in the coordinate plane, now we're working not just linear, right? Now we have things moving in multiple different directions. So the way we do that is with the midpoint formula. And this right here is the midpoint formula. It says M for midpoint is x1 plus x2 divided by 2 and y1 plus y2 divided by 2. Now that's coming from, if I have a point A, that is x1, y1, and a point B, that is x2, y2. So you'll have 2 points, and you'll take the x values of those points and average them, and the y values of those points and average them. Okay, so add them together, divide by 2, add them together, divide by 2, and you'll get your new midpoint on the coordinate plane. Okay, here's a visual for you if you're a visual person and you would like to see it. I think you'll find it much easier than that visual looks. So if that visual looks chaotic to you, don't worry about it. I'm going to explain as we go. Okay, so let's start with a number line. If we have these points on a number line, okay, so -4 and 9. You don't need to plot this on a number line. If you want to see it, it would look something like this, right? Here's -4, 3, 2, 1, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I didn't go far enough. Okay, so you have 2 points on a number line. We want to know what is their midpoint. Well, rather than have to go, okay, well, this is, and then count all of this, and then divide by 2 that way, all you do is you take the 2 endpoints and add them together and divide by 2. So -4 plus 9 is what? 5. So 5 divided by 2, or 2.5, would be my midpoint. Okay, and if you check that, 2.5, that looks about right? My spacing's a little off, but that should be in the middle of the 2 points they gave us, okay? Now, like I said, you don't have to do that part of it, but if you're a visual person and you want to check it that way, that's fine, but you definitely don't need to, okay? Okay, so those I would say are the easy ones, where it's just like add them together, divide by 2. Where they get a little bit fancier is now they give you 2 endpoints. So it says EF has endpoints of E and F. What are the coordinates of the midpoint? Here's what I highly, highly recommend you do. Every point on the coordinate plane has an X value and a Y value, okay? But we're going to be dealing with an X1 and an X2 and a Y1 and a Y2, okay? It is super important that you know which is which, because if you start mixing them up, you're going to get very weird answers. So here's what I would do if I were you. I would call your first point X1, Y1. And I would call your second point X2, Y2. Okay? You don't have to. You could switch that. You could call the first one X2, Y2 and the second one X1, Y1, and you'll still get the right answers. But if you mix up the ones with the twos, you will get the wrong answer every time. Okay, so just make sure we're doing, for the midpoint, x1 plus x2 divided by 2 and y1 plus y2 divided by 2. The most common mistake I see made on this is people add these two together and then they add these two together. We don't want to add x's to y's. We want our x's to stay together. We want our y's to stay together. Okay, so don't combine different letters. Keep your letters together. All right, so if this is my setup, then my midpoint is going to be x1, which is 7, plus x2, which is 2, divided by 2. Okay, and then we just put a comma in between. We're naming a new point, right? It's the midpoint that we're finding. So put a comma, and then it's going to be your y values. 5 plus -4 divided by 2. And midpoint is always addition, but if we're adding a negative, it can look like subtraction, right? So 7 plus 2 divided by 9, or divided by 2 is 9 over 2. 5 plus a -4 is 1 over 2. You may write it like this. You could say that's my midpoint. Or if you like it better as decimals, you may say it's 4.5 and 0.5. Okay. Any idea a good way to check your answer on these? Yeah, what would you do, Sebastian?
Plot it.
You could plot it. Yeah, graph it. If you put all three of those points on a graph, M should be directly between E and F. Okay? Now, I'm not saying you need to plot it, but if you're the type that really wants to check your answer, just give yourself even just a basic graph, right? Here, if you want to do it like this, here's the coordinate plane. We started at 7, 5. So 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 5 is probably up here somewhere. So that's E. F is at 2, -4, so that's down here somewhere. Look at your midpoint, 4.5 and 0.5 would be right around there. As long as they are linear and it looks like the same distance away, you can feel pretty good about your answer. Okay? Questions on that? And like I said, you don't have to do this. That's just if you want to check your answer. Okay, I'm not going to have you try one of those on your own just because I feel like you've done that before, right? Has anyone not done that before, midpoint formula? Okay, hopefully you've seen it. If you haven't, I apologize, but you should have seen it in your algebra class last year. This is the hard one. This is the one that requires a little bit of extra effort. This is the one, they're going to give you the midpoint. Okay, so they're telling you M is 2, -1. And they're going to give you one of the endpoints, and you have to find the other endpoint. Okay, so it's a little bit tricky because you have to set it up differently. So we know one endpoint, so I'm going to call the endpoint my x1, y1. And I'm going to call my midpoint my x sub m and y sub m. Okay, which means point D that we're looking for is our x2, y2 point. We don't know that one. So we're just going to call that x2, y2. Okay, now think about the midpoint formula. I have it right here. We're taking x1 plus x2 divided by 2 equals the midpoint. So you're basically plugging in two different problems here. We know our x midpoint. Okay, so I'm just going to give you a basic setup first, like kind of a new formula, but it's the same formula. You're going to solve your x midpoint equal to your x1 plus the x2 divided by 2. And you're going to solve your y midpoint equal to y1 plus y2 divided by 2. But do you see how it's the same formula? This and this are here and here. Okay, we're just setting them separately equal to what midpoint coordinates we have. So let's think through this. If my midpoint is -2, 1, my x1, y1 is -5, 7, and my second point, my other end point is x2, y2, we're going to just focus on the x's for now. Okay, so I'm going to stick to the left here. My x midpoint is -2. My x1 is what? -5. What's my x2? We don't know it, right? It's right here. It's the unknown. So that's going to be your variable, x sub 2 over 2. How do I solve that for x sub 2? Pull out your algebra skills here. David, what do you do?
Isolate it.
How do you isolate it?
You multiply 2 by both sides and add 5 by both
Yes, so we're going to start by multiplying by 2 on both sides. So this goes away, or becomes -1. Okay, so here's our new setup. Now add 5. That means 1 is my x sub 2 value. Okay, now let's set up our y's. What's going to go here? My y sub m. M meaning midpoint, right? So it's the y value of my midpoint. What is that?
7.
Not 7.
The x, y1?
Ym. Y sub m. This one.
That's the midpoint, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Oh. 1?
8?
It's a 1, right? It's this one here. So this is my x of my midpoint and my y of my midpoint. I want the y value of my midpoint, so that's going to be 1 equals, what's y sub 1? 7, right? That's this one over here. So 7 plus, what's y sub 2? It's our unknown, right? It's the one that we're solving for. So we just plug it in as y sub 2 divided by 2. Okay, now from here, we solve just like we solved the other one. We multiply by 2 and multiply by 2. So I get 2 equals, this is 1, 2 equals 7 plus y2, take away the 7, and I get my y sub 2 is -5. Okay? The question was, what is the other endpoint? So where does that other endpoint fall?
1, -5.
1, -5. It's a point, right? We just found an x and a y. So D is at 1, -5. Do you see that? Okay. I want you to try the next one. And if I were you, I would pay attention to how we labeled everything in that first problem, right? We have all these different pieces. I would label them if you're going to have a hard time remembering which one's which, because honestly, these numbers get mixed up all the time. And it's usually because someone didn't have it labeled. So label what you know with all your x1s, x2s, y1s, y2s, x sub m, x sub y, or y sub m, and see if you can figure out the coordinates of the other endpoint. Okay, so you have your midpoint, you have one endpoint, find the other endpoint. Give it a go. And if you finish, you know what I'll do? This is what I'll do. I'm going to tell you the right answer. If you finish this and you have the right answer, you may get started on the homework. If you don't, hang out and I will do it with you in just a minute. But it ends up being point B. Oh. So if you get that when you're done, you are welcome to start on the homework. Yes, Sebastian.
Up there in the notes when it says D equals, does that say x1 or x2? It says x2 and y2, correct? For D equals?
Up here, x2, y2.
Thank you, because I thought the comma was a 1 and it confused me.
No, sorry, comma, yep. if you're stuck right now, I'm gonna label everything up here how you should label it. If you're not, just keep going. Yeah. Oh, you got a positive. Oh, gotcha. Yep, so it should be negative. Yeah. Yeah, you don't have to check with me. You got what I have up there, you're welcome to get going. Okay, let's work this out for those of you that maybe didn't get that answer. Or just aren't done yet. Okay, here we go. So when you're finding the endpoint, you have to set it up as two separate things because you can't just plug it into the midpoint formula because there's two different things going on. Find the x, find the y. So we're gonna say the x midpoint, so that would be 4, equals the x sub 1, -3, plus the x sub 2, which we don't know, divided by 2. Okay, so that's going to take care of your x's. Your y's, we would do y midpoint, so -9 equals y1, -5, plus y2 divided by 2. Okay, so that should be your setups. Anyone unclear on where I'm getting something from those setups? Okay, so now when we solve it, on the left side here, we would multiply by 2 on both sides. So we get 8 equals -3 plus x2. And then we add 3. So I get x sub 2 equals 11. Okay, so that's my x value of my endpoint. My y value, I have to come over here and multiply both by 2. So I get -18 equals -5 plus y2, because that 2 setup would be 1. Then add 5 to that. So -18 plus 5 is a -13. So that's going to be my y value, which means 11 is my x, -13 is my y. So this would be my point, 11, -13. Okay, any questions on that?